Good morning. Our group is made up of Camila Echeverri and who is talking to you about Angie Duarte.
Poland and history. After the arrival of communism, Poland begins to fight to find success and have a hold in the world as a free country due to the domination of foreign power Poland.
Our Poland continued its path with three forces that are communism, Catholicism, and foreign power, which determined the image that Poland perceived of itself. During medieval time, between the 6th century, the servants were the people who cultivated the land, but even so these peasants were fake their lands and in this way to exploit the labor of these workers. For this reason, a dispute begins between the bourgeoisie and the rich landowners, since the latter saw the bourgeoisie. It is when the landowners begin to encourage their neighbors, such as Germans, Armenians, and Jews, to migrate to Poland. It was boon for the Poles because they had been able to achieve solidarity and made that with these migrants. They could lower taxes and the power of the king itself, which led to the landowners become more reliant on tax and the numbers per capita. At this moment, they give an important advantage to the rich landowners and a political stability is generated but not for long because the people begin to carry out collective behaviors as a result of confronting the invaded owners through political means. Consequently, it creates an imbalance in the state and its way in 1772, Poland is divided since it's observed by powers such as Russia, Prussia, and Austria, which broke with it the reduction of wealth of the landowners being dominated by these three powers, its abolition, serfdom, and redistributed land to both foreign parties and peasants, but this domination culminated at the end of the Second World War.
In 1918, Poland was revolted as a state for the next 12 years. It was a free country. One of the main political objectives was to distribute the lands to the peasants so that they could work autonomously, giving way to an agrarian reform. But everything ended in 1939 with the invasion of Germany and Russia.
Communists became of the official ideology of the state in 1948. After the people not being able to supply the state with everything they asked for, it began to generate pressure in the peasant towns in the 19th century. At this time, it is where the church becomes an important part of the freedom and the land of freedom. After some much mistrust of the people and the state being led by the parliament that sought to coalesce, they reached the point of entering into crisis. After a socialist ideology in which the political system was constituted, it had as a consequence that the working people began to believe that it was the responsibility of the state to provide their homes, leading to bankruptcy and finally creating a martial law in order to quell and the call for reforms. The Solidarity movement in 1981.
A key point for communists was the collectivization of agriculture. Generally, a great commitment with the Polish peasants. Since all their participation is needed to achieve a good economic development all the time. As time passed, the Polish had to work more and more, coming to consider an oppression of the
1990,
peasants.
the first
The
presidential
reaction
election
was
took
only
place
to
in Poland,
produce to
where they
satisfy
had no
the needs of
influence
their
for other
families.
country. They were
Thus,
great
they
economic
managed
changes.
to reform
The agriculture
agriculture
sector was a
policy,
little affected,
seeing
but
themselves
improvements
as a
were
threat
seen in
to
other
the
sectors,
government.
such as coal production.
The culture of Poland consists in always having the church as base. Sense of them is very important because it demonstrates security, and it is these infrastructures that have been the image of perseverance and success, because they are the ones that have not been affected despite so many blows that have been given. The People's Church, found in practically all Polish cities, is founded as a symbol of this true force and presents a particularly appropriate metaphor for Polish culture. In addition, a study from 2017 indicates that the small cities of Poland have the potential for the innovation of cultural and creative development due to so much history that the inhabitants have in life in this country.
The metaphor that we find in Colombia is the dance. All the typical Colombian dances represent each area of the country, honoring the history of our ancestors, our culture and tradition. The typical Colombian dances represent our happy, optimist culture and above all it shows a country that despite the difficulties, we always give a beautiful smile to all the people.
Hall theory.
Poland is a country with a high context due to the fact that any type of conversation can be held between them. Foreigners may think that their way of expressing themselves is heavy, since they joke a lot about their past. The Polish are not ashamed of their history, but they don't like that the foreigners joke
We
about them.
came to the conclusion that initially Poland in 1948 began to be polychronic country, since the basis of the movement is the collectivization of the people, but as the years go by we find that it finally becomes monochronic and until now it remains that way. We dare to say that his attempt to be polychronic failed and gave way to monochronism.
The distance and the contact is respected by the people. However, they greet each other in a courteous way, giving a kiss on the hand. That this space is a symbol of education for Polish culture.
Some of the typical food of Poland are zupa pomidorła. It's a tomato soup with vegetables and spaghetti or rice. Other is a pierogi ruski. It's a potato fried. It's very similar to the pierogi meme. It's a fried meat. And the last is oskipet. It's chips milk cheese.
Typical Poland costume. The Polish national dances.
Poland is located in a key place, and that is why it has been so hit and each battle has marked them. That is why their culture has developed without losing sight of their past. On the contrary, they learn from it, and that has helped them to create strong ties between the Polish community.
Another factor that caught our attention is to see how the Polish people over the years have worked for their human rights. Throughout its history, you can see how Polish were affected. Another factor that caught our attention is to see how the Polish people over the years have worked for their human rights. Throughout its history, you can see how Polish were affected, like Colombians, caught our attention a lot about this culture because our history is very short compared to them. But we found something similar at that. Like Colombians, caught our attention a lot about this culture because our history is very short compared to them. But we found something similar at that